Chapter 12. The Threat. There was a crash. The porridge of boiled potatoes and grains went flying, along with the tea and the crushed fruits. Mau Mau, her clothes soaked in porridge, looked up at the person in front of her.
You would dare serve this tripe to Lady Li Hua? Make it again, and do it right this time.
A heavily made-up young woman was glaring at Mau Mau, one of Consort Li Hua's ladies-in-waiting.
Ugh, what a pain.
Mau Mau sighed and started gathering the dishes and cleaning up the spilled food. She was in the Crystal Pavilion, Lady Li Hua's residence. Unfriendly gazes surrounded her, mocking looks, scornful eyes, and downright hostile expressions. For a servant of Consort Gyokyo like Mau Mau, this was truly enemy territory, a bed of nails. His Majesty had come to Gyokyo's chambers the night before. Mau Mau had tasted the food for poison, as she always did, and had been about to leave the room when the Emperor himself had spoken to her. "I have a request for the apothecary of whom I've heard so much."
Wonder what exactly he's heard.
The Emperor was a robust man and handsome, only in his mid-30s, and he was the absolute ruler of this nation. No wonder he dazzled the women of the rear palace. Mau Mau was one of the few exceptions. Approximately the only thing she thought of the Emperor was,
"That's a really long beard. I wonder what it feels like to touch."
Now she asked,
"What might that be, Your Majesty?"
with a deferential bow of the head. She knew that she was insignificant before the Emperor, that a breath from His Majesty could blow away her life, and she wanted to get out of the room before she accidentally breached etiquette somehow. "Consort Li Hua is feeling unwell. Perhaps you could look after her for a while." Well, there it was, and as Mau Mau wanted her head and her shoulders to maintain close relations for a long time to come, the only possible answer was,
"Of course, sire."
By look after her, Mau Mau understood His Majesty meant to mean make her better. The Emperor no longer favored Consort Li Hua with his visits, but perhaps some vestige of his affection remained, or perhaps he simply knew he couldn't neglect the daughter of a powerful man. It made no difference. If Mau Mau didn't help her, she couldn't expect to hold onto her head for very long. In a manner of speaking, she and Li Hua would share the same fate. The fact that the Emperor had asked this of a young girl like Mau Mau meant either that he knew perfectly well that the doctor of the rear palace could not be relied upon, or that he didn't care if either or both of them died. In either case, it was a reckless request to make. The more time Mau Mau spent with these people who ruled in the imperial palace, who lived above the clouds, as the traditional expression went, the more she found herself thinking how much trouble their every command and desire caused.
Still, did he really have to ask me right in front of his other consort?
She almost marveled at a man who could make a request like that of her, then eat a luxurious meal and be intimate with Consort Gyokyo immediately afterwards. Maybe that was just an emperor for you. When Mau Mau began to look after Consort Li Hua, the first thing she turned her eye to was improving the woman's diet. The poisonous face powder had been banished from use in the rear palace on Jinchi's command, and thorough punishment appointed for the merchants who had brought it in the first place. It would not be possible to get more of the stuff from here on out, in which case the priority had to be expunging the remaining toxins from Li Hua's body. Her current meals were based on bland congee, but it was frequently topped with things like deep-fried fish, broiled pork, red and white bean buns, and other rich foods like shark fin or crab. Nutritious, true enough, but too heavy for the stomach of a convalescent. Forcing herself not to salivate, Mau Mau told the cook to change the menu. The weight of an imperial assignment gave even an unimportant lady-in-waiting like Mau Mau a certain amount of authority, and Li Hua's meals were made to consist of porridge, rich in fiber, tea, an excellent diuretic, and fruit, easily digested. Unfortunately, all of these were now scattered on the ground. Mau Mau, raised in the red light district as she was appalled by the waste of food. The women of the Crystal Pavilion were less impressed by whatever imperial commission Mau Mau might have had than they were displeased by the fact that she served their rival, Consort Gyokyo. Mau Mau would have gladly given them all a piece of her mind, but instead she bit her tongue and cleaned up the mess. Li Hua's ladies-in-waiting brought the consort sumptuous meals, but over time they came back more and more untouched. Presumably, the ladies got to enjoy the leftovers. Mau Mau would have liked to perform a proper physical examination of the patient, but Li Hua's canopied bed was surrounded by a phalanx of ladies-in-waiting, collectively performing a rather ungracious and ineffective nursing duty. When they provoked a cough by slapping whitening powder on Li Hua's face while she was asleep, they would exclaim, "The air is bad in here! It's this noxious worm!" and chase Mau Mau out of the room. She couldn't get at Li Hua to do an exam.
No question in my mind.
At this rate, she'll keep wasting away until she dies. Maybe she had taken in too much of the poison and it was too late to get it out of her system. Or perhaps she simply wasn't strong enough. If a person didn't eat, they would die. Liwa appeared to be losing the will to live. Mao Mao was leaning against a wall, counting the number of days her head was likely to remain attached to her body, when she heard a shrill of coquettish voices. She had a very bad feeling about this. She raised her head very slowly and found herself confronted with a gorgeous face, smiling like the sun. It was the beautiful eunuch. "You look troubled," he said. "Do I?" Mao Mao replied tonelessly, her eyes half closed. "I wouldn't have said it if you didn't." He stared straight at her, so she tried looking away instead. He leaned in, his eyelashes noticeably long, to counter her, and when their eyes met again, Mao Mao very much broke her promise to Gaoxuan by adopting the expression of someone looking at a piece of garbage.
"What is with that girl?"
The words were soft but venomous. Mao Mao was referring to the woman who had spilled the food. She was insufferable, and she veritably exuded menace. A woman's wrath was a terrible thing, but Jinshi nonetheless said softly into her ear with his honeyed voice, "Shall we go inside?" Mao Mao found herself pushed into the room before she could object. The chamber's self-appointed guardians looked even more dangerous than before, but when they saw the nymph beside Mao Mao, they immediately put on nonchalant smiles, even though they were all obviously forced. Truly, women could be terrifying creatures. "Surely you agree it's unbecoming for lovely, talented young ladies to make a hash of the Emperor's good offices." The woman paused, they bit their lips, and then one by one they backed away from the bed. "There now, go," Jinshi said, giving Mao Mao a little shove on the back that almost toppled her over. She bowed and approached the bed, then took Liwa's hand. It was pale. The veins stood out prominently. Mao Mao had some experience of medicine, the practice of healing, if not as much as she had of medicine, the concoctions that did the healing. Lihua's eyes were closed, and she didn't fight Mao Mao. It was hard to tell if she was even awake or asleep. She already seemed to have one foot in the grave. Mao Mao placed a finger on Lihua's face, hoping to get a better look at her eye. She was greeted by a slick, slippery texture. Lihua's skin was as pale as it had ever been. "It hasn't changed?" Mao Mao frowned, then went over to the ladies in waiting. She stood in front of one of them, the one who had been making the consort up earlier. In a deliberately soft, restrained voice, Mao Mao asked, Are you the one who does the ladies' makeup?" "I certainly am. It's a lady-in-waiting's duty, you know." The woman seemed mildly intimidated by Mao Mao's searing look. It obviously took everything she had to remain defiant. "We want Consort Liwa to be as beautiful as she can, always." The girl sniffed. She sounded so sure of herself.
"Is that right?"
A crack echoed through the room. The girl stumbled aside, in the direction of the force, hardly knowing what had happened. She felt an unfamiliar heat in her cheek and ear. Mao Mao's right hand smarted. It burned almost as much as the girl's left cheek. Mao Mao had smacked her about as hard as she was able. "What's wrong with you?" one of the other ladies in waiting demanded. Several of them were openly astounded.
"Me? I'm just giving an idiot her due."
Mao Mao grabbed the girl by the hair, pulling her to her feet. "Ow, that hurt! Stop!" the lady in waiting wailed, but Mao Mao paid her no heed. She dragged the girl over to the makeup and picked up a carved jar with her free hand. She opened the lid and smeared the contents on the face of the lady in waiting. White powder went everywhere, causing coughing fits. Tears brimmed in the young woman's eyes.
"There, now you can be as beautiful as your lady. Lucky you."
Mao Mao gave a tug of the girl's hair, forcing her to meet her eyes, and leered like a beast with its prey in its claws.
"You can have poison in your pores, in your mouth, in your nose, in every part of your body. You can wither away just like your beloved Lady Liwa until your eyes are sunken and your skin is bloodless."
"No, I don't believe you," the newly powdered lady in waiting simpered.
"You don't understand why this stuff was forbidden, do you? It's poison."
Mao Mao was well and truly angry now. Not because of the sneers and glares, not because of the spilled porridge, but because of this fool of a lady-in-waiting who thought of nothing but simply assumed she was right about everything. "But it's the prettiest, the most beautiful. I thought Lady Liwa would be happy." Mao dipped her hand in the powder scattered on the floor, then grabbed the girl's cheek, pulling, distorting her lips.
"Who would be happy to be continually covered in poison that sucks their life away?"
It was like listening to a child trying to explain why they'd done something wrong. Mama gave a click of her tongue and let the woman go. A few long strands of dark hair remained wrapped around her fingers.
"All right, Go rinse your mouth out and wash your face.
She watched the girl all but flee the room, weeping, and then turned to the other ladies in waiting, who were now thoroughly frightened.
Go on. You want that stuff to get on the patient? Clean it up.
She pointed to the powdery floor, deciding to ignore the fact that she was the one who had spilled it. The other ladies in waiting winced, but then went to get the cleaning supplies. Mau Mau crossed her arms and snorted. Some of the powder was on her clothes, but she didn't care. One person had remained calm and collected throughout all this. Women are indeed terrifying, Jinchi said now, tucking his hands into his wide sleeves. Mau Mau had completely forgotten he was there. "Ah," she said as a rush of blood to her head subsided. She squatted down right where she was. Now she'd done it.